Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Creative Quarantine Sessions. My name is Alex Whittenberg, and I'll be your host for the day. We have a wonderful guest, and I'd like to give you a little introduction about Anita Yavich, who will be joining us today. She has received Obie, Lucille Ortel, Drama Desk, and Ovation Awards, and she has worked extensively in theater and opera. Her designs have been on Broadway with Fool for Love, Chinglish, Venus in Fur, and Anna in the Tropics. Off-Broadway at the Manhattan Theater Club, where she did Tales from Red Vienna and the Explorers Club. At the Signature Theater, she did Golden Child, Big Love, Kung Fu, and others. At the Classic Stage Company, Caucasian Chalk Circle, New Jerusalem, and Texts for Nothing. At the New York Shakespeare Festival, Kit Marlowe, The Winter's Tale, and others. Her work in opera includes Cyrano de Bergerac at La Scala and the Metropolitan Opera, Les Troyens at Metropolitan Opera, Steve Reich's Three Tales from the Vienna Festival and the International Tour, and the Madame Butterfly at Houston Grand Opera and Grand Theatre de Geneve, and more. I was lucky enough to be a student of hers at the Conservatory of Theater Arts at Purchase College, where she has taught for many years and still does, and I couldn't be happier to welcome her to the show today. Please join me in welcoming costume designer Anita Yavich. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for being here today.
You're welcome. I'm still in my office. Has not changed for all these years.
Yes, I miss the bare walls of the Purchase studios.
Minimalism, yes.
Yes, less is more, right?
Totally.
So I want to talk a bit about your career and your early beginnings, going back to being born in Hong Kong and being educated in a colonial education system. Take us back there and tell us about your early beginnings.
Well, I was born in Hong Kong when it was still a British colony, and I went to Canadian Catholic school, and we had to speak English every day during class, and only except for Chinese class, Chinese language or Chinese history class. The rest, even during recess, we have to speak English. But in many ways, we were educated as colonized subjects. So, it wasn't really about like learning how to think independently or, really not until and then when I was a teenager, when I was 13, I moved to Nigeria to live with my dad. And I went to local high school there, and it was Nigeria's 22nd year of independence. And again, independence from England. So again, the colonial education sort of continued. And but then I transferred to American International School middle through the semester. And I think then I was exposed to American education. And that really just changed the way I look at so many things. Like, every day I was asked to, share my thoughts with my classmates. We would sit around in a circle formation. I actually realized that I had to learn English. I really wanted to learn English. I wanted English to be my language, and I would practice every day to talk to my ceiling, just to not sound so awkward, So, yeah. There's some feedback, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll take a look at the feedback, try to avoid that. Don't know if this will be any better. Does this sound better?
Yes, it does.
Excellent. So I have to say, Alan, our technical director, is not with us today. So I'm flying solo
Yeah,
in this brave new world of digital technology.
yeah, very brave. Yeah.
Something you've shared just now that struck me was sitting in a circle as students. That sort of takes us back to the early beginnings of sitting around a fire and telling stories, and then a little further down the line, attending theatrical events in circular or semicircular spaces. Do you think somehow that circular formation influenced your theatrical sensibilities in any way?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, from a creative standpoint, right? That everybody on the production team is equal. I definitely think that. I mean, obviously, designers are not playwrights or directors, but I do definitely think we have a very, definite contribution to the whole process. And in many ways, we are the ones who figure out how, a play that, start out from a literary form, how do we manifest it into a visual form? And in some ways, like, we're almost also like, um, conductor for a piece of music, and we have to figure out, besides the design, but the sequence of how design is revealed, helps reveal the story. So in a way, we're like orchestrating, and arranging the visuals that, whether it would go along with the script or counter the script, in order to highlight or, you know, pair with the dramatic moments and sequence, and the, structure of the dramatic structure of the play or opera, musical, for example. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all relevant for sure.
yeah.
Looking back to another early childhood inspiration of yours was a children's book of King Lear that you got. Can you speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, it was the first illustrated children's storybook that I read when I was a kid, and saw the photos. I mean, drawings, and we, in my family, we also have three girls. So obviously, everybody think. I mean, I thought I was Cordelia, even though I'm the middle child. It has huge influence on me. In so many ways, because it's a huge tragedy, and I think, parts of the influence is really about, the largesse of emotions, and how, you are, the idea of, I don't know, when when I saw the Akira Kurosawa's version of King Lear Ron, it really opened up my mind to understand it, in more like a larger cause and effect, like almost like karmic kind of, saw the story in that way. So it was also a very spiritual story to me as well. And yeah, and the struggle of, you know, um, your destiny and the will, and, and total loss of control, all that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Therapy, much therapy is necessary if you grow up with behavior at too young an age, Yeah.
Oh my gosh, seriously. Well, I think in a way, theater work in itself is therapy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why we all went into this to begin with, right?
Right. That's true.
To help answer life's biggest questions.
Yeah. To help answer the unanswerable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, in undergrad at UC Santa Barbara, you had a professor that was hugely influential on your journey.
Mhm.
Could you speak to that influence?
Well, I met my mentor. I mean, I wanted to be a painter when I went to UC Santa Barbara, but I was afraid to tell my parents that I wanted to be in the arts. So I told them I wanted to be a linguistics major, but very soon I changed that, and then I wanted to be a painter, and I went to the art department, and I didn't really hit it off with the painting fine arts professor there, and I went over to the theater department, and I met Dunya Ramikova. She is a really great costume designer, and she has, really been a lifelong collaborator with Peter Sellers, and it was like I think it was 1988, and it was like one of her first years there. Actually, it was before, yeah, maybe around 88. Anyways, when I met her, I told her, I showed her my paintings that I would do on the side whenever, I had time. And she said she wasn't very impressed with my paintings, but she was very impressed with how I was trying to express to her that I don't know why I had to do these paintings, but I couldn't stop, and I had to do it. And she said, okay, so that's determination right there. And she told me the difference between being a fine artist and being a theater artist is, collaborating with people. So the first thing you need to find out is whether that is something you would like to do. And so she gave me a production assignment. So I designed costumes for a dance piece, which I was like, just loved every minute of it. I love working with the choreographer and the dancers and the costume shop and working with music. So I said, okay, this is what I really want to do. And even after I graduated, I applied to she highly recommended me to apply to grad school, and I only applied to Yale the first time. I didn't get in. But Ming Cho Lee and Jane Greenwood told me come back the following year and try again. And then I did try again the following year, and then my father passed away, and I had to wait one more year to go to Yale. And those 2 years between undergrad and grad school, I was working many side jobs, restaurants, anything I could do to make money. And Dunya was, she was working all over the world in Salzburg Festival and, different opera companies. And she would always fly back and meet up with me whenever she was back in town, and gave me projects. So I would do projects whenever I had free time and would meet up. So basically, she taught me independently those 2 years, and really like never gave up on me. She didn't charge me a penny, and so she has been my mentor like basically my entire artistic life. So I'm very grateful to her.
That's amazing. Yeah. Mentorship, I think, in this business in particular is key.
Yes.
So a question about your time at Yale. You have said that Ming Cho Lee would scan your designs like an X-ray machine. Can you speak to the experience of being in class with Ming?
I think Ming is a great teacher, great designer, great teacher, and he has. I think what is so incredible about him is that he has certainly in his own design process have tried and experimented with so many different ideas, and he has made certain mistakes, and so he that's why when we go to class and we show our ideas, rough drawings, rough models, he can see right through us because he has walked in our shoes in every step of the way, and he could he was really like an X-ray because he has made many of the same mistakes we have made before, right? And he understood how we got there, and so there's no way you can BS your way out. It's like you're just like you're very transparent there. It is a very scary experience, but it's also a very liberating experience, and and you just in front of such a master who really saw your work in a very personal way as well. But so I think it's scary, but it's good. It's really scary, but it's very good for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Ming just turned 90. So happy birthday, Ming.
Yeah, happy birthday.
We'll loop back around to school towards the end of our talk, because now that you're a professor at Purchase, I'm curious to know what that experience is. But moving on, I want to ask you, how important is intuition in design? When you're designing a piece, how important is intuition?
I would say, in Buddhism, I remember I watched a really a Buddhist monk giving a teacher and teaching. He is from Taiwan, and he said, "Your first thought is your best thought," and that is very true. Your first instinct is like the truest. The more you think on it, the more convoluted it might get. Of course, how do you bring this thought manifest it alive into a visual form? That is a very big challenge, because you can do it in so many ways. But I think really design is about figuring out the way to capture that first feeling. And that also includes some of your first impressions. And I think I've worked on many shows before. I've seen many shows. There are only very few shows that I have seen that felt exactly the way I felt when I read it, sequentially as well. And that is a very incredible feeling. And it doesn't always get there. And I don't think you fail necessarily because it doesn't work that way. But when it works exactly that same way, it is a very, very powerful feeling. And I'm not saying that, everyone is going to think the same way just because, look, any Shakespeare play, any Greek play, like it can be interpreted in so many different ways. Every one of us, when we go to the museum and look at a master painting, we might not all start from the same spot. We would look at we have a different entry point, and our eyes might travel through the painting in very different journey. So what I'm trying to say is that every one of us have our own a way of connecting and perceiving things, and that is like each and everyone's unique gift. So part of being an artist is to find what that is and figure out how you can connect your work to that, to the way you perceive, and if you can share the way your mind makes impression, or your mind perceives with somebody else in the audience, then that's the most powerful thing you can do. Whether it's visual arts or theater arts or art in general. Yeah.
Connecting it to your personal experiences, right?
Yeah, but personal, not in a way just because I've gone through such and such growing up experience, coming of age experience. It has nothing to do with that. It's very pure. It's like I can't even explain it. It's like your disposition, like what you were born with in a way, and somehow you just connect that way. So yeah, I hope that explain. I know it sounds very esoteric, but I don't.
No. Listen, the esoteric talks are the very best.
Okay.
I think that is those are the richest conversations that come out of theater and art.
Mm-hmm.
These kind of ethereal ideas.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at some of your work. I'm going to bring up some images here. In particular, We're going to start with an opera you did for the Metropolitan Opera in 2003. This was Les Troyens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was a huge scale. There were 500 costumes, right?
Yes.
So as I scanned through, why don't you just tell us a little bit about some of the designs we're looking at here?
For me, like Troyan is about the Trojan War, and it's about also the second part of that is not only about the Trojan War, but it's also about Aeneas going to Carthage and meeting Dido, and then being harkened back by all his dead relatives, saying, hey, don't forget why you're here. And he had to leave and basically created Italy after that, right? So, so for me, it's very much a piece. First of all, I got to work with a great set and costume designer, actually, Maria Bjornson. It was like tremendous honor to be able to work with such a master, and obviously Francesca Zambello, the director, and Jim Ingalls, lighting designer. I mean, it was like the most amazing experience, and it's a seminal experience for me. It was the first time I designed at the Metropolitan Opera, and so for me, it was really about how do you deal with antiquity, right? How do you look at the past, right? The Trojan War, everybody knows something about the Trojan War, but how do you still make it relevant to today, and what perspective are you trying to use? And for me, it's very much about reconstructing history. So I really started with looking at a lot of Palestinian costumes and Eastern costumes, like the area of Troy, and then I started to see the idea of patchwork, and that's really how I started. And when you go back and try to patchwork history back together, there might be some pieces missing. There might be some pieces where the edge are not together anymore. So you can see in Cassandra's case, the underskirt is like kind of coming out. It's like so there's something very fluid and uncontrollable. It's always important for any costumes design that it has to deal with circumstance for me and behavior. For me, it's like I don't think like just because you set it in a historical period would give you the sense of history, but if the costume itself has a sense of history, or like a sense of decay, or a sense of falling apart, or a sense of the way it's age or something, then all of a sudden you understand the history in a very tactile way, and so it's very important to have that. Now, with all the ghosts, right, from the Trojan ghosts that come back, Priam, Hecuba, Cassandra, and Hector, I wanted to me, like the whole idea of God, like who is a ghost, right? What makes somebody a ghost?
Right.
It's a ghost. It's like you can't move on to the next place where you're supposed to go, right? And what is holding them back is how they died, how they were killed. That was all they were holding on to, right? And so I wanted the wound to be, very visual, visible, and I wanted the rest of all whatever they're wearing to kind of fade away. So all there is remaining is the wound, but you will still see the structure of the garment, the architecture of the garment, as some kind of an empty outline, and it's just like kind of filled with blood. So I painted these in my bathtub. I was splashing around. I mean, it really looked like I killed some pig in my bathtub. Those, and then they did like such an incredible job at the Met when they painted these costumes. Yeah, so it was great.
Wow, they're fabulous. The renderings are just incredible, and as we go ahead, I know there were some 80 choristers and supers in the piece, right?
Yeah, and they had many different costumes. So we would do fittings. I had a whole year to design and build this, which is very, very short. Now you some of these Trojan women, they actually have, and the Trojan men, they have actual pieces that are missing in their costume. So, I really hate that, the cartoon like patchwork, like, little patches. Like, I wanted it to be like, oh, what if they just took someone who's dead, like on the street, because one of the costume pieces were missing, and they just like ripped that off of some dead body and like sew it on, and it doesn't fit, and there's like a gap so you can see their under skirts, coming out, or the undersleeve. So that's kind of what I was trying to do, and that I wanted that to. I mean, you think it's 80 people was a lot of people, but actually that it wasn't. When you think about war, you wanted the whole stage to be filled full. And so I thought, oh, if I really also do the idea of patchwork, things that don't go with each other, everybody is sort of sectioned off. And I just wanted it to like look like a really big, like mosaic, of people on stage. Yeah.
Absolutely. In a way, you are sort of, once again, painting, right? You're painting the stage full of performers.
Yes. And when we get to Carthage, so when we first see Dido, she is in white. And actually, all the people in Carthage are dressed in white because of the utopian society. But of course, when Dido started to fall in love with Aeneas, we wanted to really use the color purple, to kind of symbolize, that love that they have for each other. And you can see the lines of her clothes. It just become like currents, like kind of going against each other in the purple. Like some of it is sheer, some of it is opaque, and you can just see, like, when you're in love, you have so many emotions just kind of like whirling around you. I wanted that feeling of passion, that she was enveloped in.
And it was achieved beautifully.
Thank you.
Now, I'm curious, this in 2013 was brought to the cinema screens with the Metropolitan Opera in HD. So this was probably an unexpected turn of events to now see these costumes, which were being seen at such a distance, now about 20 feet tall on the cinema screen. Did you have a chance to experience this in the movie theater?
I think, I think, actually, the original problem before I knew about the screen, putting it on big screen like 10 years later or 11 years later, the first question that I was asking myself was, how are the details going to read in this huge opera house? And a lot of people were trying to tell me, oh, don't put too many details. Nobody's going to see it. I was like, I need the details. Like, how am I going to achieve that? So how do I do this patchwork and build this architecture and see all the lines, in my head? How do I make that happen? And so I started doing miniature samples. So these were like maybe 8 inches sample of colors to see how they would read. And I think that one of the trick is that if you set a cool color with a warm color on stage, they will offset each other. The contrast is going to make it read from far away. And so that was the principle which I was sort of working off of. And that's how I did all the armor and, and the basic tunics. Well, they're not very basic at all. They're so much work. and we, at the Met, we always do a lighting rehearsal before we bring in all the chorus and everybody. So we actually made life-size pieces of these and figure out the lighting before we went further with the rest. So that was like the first thing we wanted to make sure it was going to read. So this is a photo from the first production in 2000 and was it 2002?
I believe 2003.
2003, yeah, because it opened in February. I was working since 2002. Yeah, and this is from a later production,
Okay.
the 2013 one. Yeah.
And here we have a chance to start to see some of the work of the late Maria as well, the set designer.
Yeah, you can see all her amazing set, and she has designed not only the set but every single prop in the
Wow.
every single flag, every single backpack, all the little boat. She designed all of it. There were drawings of everything, complete design. All the
Wow.
she designed all the kites, like, I mean, she designed that. It's so beautiful. They were amazing.
And here are the ghosts.
Yeah, coming back. Yeah.
Amazing. You know, what's so impressive about this and working on the scale of the Grand Opera is that you're taking so many ancient civilizations, and then within those ancient civilizations, breaking it down into individual groups and subclasses, and having a chance to kind of collage that all on the stage. What a treat, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I mean, with the Carthage chorus too, we basically did a cookie cutter formula. So we did like 7 to 8 silhouettes per group, like per man, women, children. And then we would assign according to, their height, body type, whatever. And then we would, the way I differentiate them so they don't look like just seven styles of tops, and I would custom fit each one of them so they look very individuated. You couldn't tell that there were only 7 or 8 different shapes, that we were going for, but because I was able to adjust each one, so we get the variety and the whole idea of citizenry, in Carthage. And same with the Trojan, but Carthage was, because it's all white, so you only have, the length and proportion of the panels to work with, whereas the Trojans, you have also color, so it's a broader, you have more things to work with.
Right. Very good. I'd like to jump now in scale to another project. And to start, I have a little video clip here to share. I'm just going to let this play for a minute. That is The Sound of Music that you designed in, I believe, 2007 for the Salzburg Marionette Theater.
Yeah.
Stunning. That video I discovered last week, and I've watched it like 100 times. I love it so much. And it also reminds me of a film that I love very much called The Double Life of Veronique.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. I love that film. Yes.
And there's a shot in particular, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, where she's watching the marionette show and she has a perfect angle where she can see the performer manipulating the puppets as well. Mm-hmm. Completely different art form and completely different scale from the last piece we just looked at. So tell me about your experience working on The Sound of Music.
Oh my God, it was one of the most incredible experience, I have to say. It took us a year and a half to design the whole thing. We did some experiment. I
Hang
had
on.
to.
There we go.
I had to design the faces, the heads of every single character. And before I did all that, I went there and I had like a research trip with them. And they took us. They have an archival building in their whole compound. That's where they kept all the puppets from other previous shows. And they share with me, the principle of, few principle of how to design puppets, right? These marionettes, right? The ones that we had in our show were 2.5 feet tall, right? Obviously, the most important thing is that they are not symmetrical. The faces should not be symmetrical because the minute they're symmetrical, they become doll-like and they look dead. So asymmetry is actually the key to characters in puppet land, and I think in many ways in human faces as well, right? I mean, we don't know that many people who are perfectly symmetrical from left to right. So that was the key to how I, started to figure out how to design them, and I drew all their faces, worked very closely with the director Richard Hamburger. And at first, we weren't sure what hair we should use as well. Whether it should be real hair or carved hair. And in the end, we decided we had to go with carved hair because for the boys' haircut, like Friedrich's, it's very short on the side. So in the real hair on that scale would be like 2 millimeters, and it wouldn't be, it would not look right. And so all of these puppets, they were hand carved out of linden wood. And their bodies are kind of like sandwiched with foam. And then they were hand painted. And, because puppets, they don't do quick changes. So whenever the puppet has new costume, we have to make another puppet. There were about 10 puppeteers up there. If you see the show from backstage, they're all under the armpits of each other as they're trying to cross and do all kinds of choreography. It's really incredible to see that. And so I think they were carved by, we had a Swiss carver, and then they were painted by a German and an Austrian painter. And the clothes were made in Salzburg Festival's costume shop. They made real everything. I can't even tell you. They're not, these are real like collars that flip, lapels, double welt pockets. I mean, they did everything to scale. The costumes were superb,
Wow.
Yeah, so, and for the curtain clothes, I wanted each one to be a fairy tale. So I found this really great reference of a cloth that has different components of fairy tale printed on it. And so I worked with my collaborator, Hochi Asiatico, and we silk screened this in the scale that's right for the puppets. And then we made costumes out of them. So they're great.
Wow, fabulous.
Everybody is a one special story, so which I love.
Yeah. And here we have some production photos.
We have the nuns, Maria. We have my favorite things, with some crazy my favorite things out there.
Were you involved with the design of the props as well, or
No, they were doing it, and Chris Baraka did the set, and some of this we used something that they had from before, like the puppet within a puppet, which you will see later. And here we have Maria, and these are all the children in their curtain clothes, and the little puppets. You see, there's a puppet within a puppet. Very fun, yeah.
Wonderful.
And the wedding, of course. Oh my God, so romantic. The little epaulets, look at that. My God. And all of them ready to perform in their traditional, dirndls, and Loden jackets, and and then the Nazis, we had them as like Dobermans, like a kind of backdrop.
Now,
not everybody in Austria knows The Sound of Music. You know, it's very American, by the way.
right, right. Well, it sounds like such a wonderfully international affair too, having people from Switzerland and Austria working on this show.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the movement. Whenever you're designing costumes, whether it's for a dance or an opera or a play, or in this case, puppets, of course, you need to factor in the movement of the human form and the actor. So, was there a big learning curve in collaborating with the puppeteers to understand what sort of movement needed to go into these characters?
In a way, yes, but you know, they're such pros. I would tell you, one of the most beautiful story was on when we rehearse. You know, we're down where the puppets are, but the things are very long, and they're up there on a special bridge, right?
Yeah.
So if we give notes to the stage is not big, right? Because the puppet's only this like 2.5 feet tall.
Right.
So when we give notes, the puppeteers are the ones who would hear it, and they're up there. But in order to say they got the notes, the puppets would not.
Huh.
Which is so amazing.
That's incredible.
I was just like, oh, the puppet, oh my God. And the puppeteer who manipulates Friedrich, he's so funny. He always likes to make, whenever we have a break, he would make Friedrich do push-ups. It was hilarious. So this puppet is like doing push-up. It was so funny. Anyways.
That's brilliant. Brilliant. Well, it's such a lovely production, and that went on tour, I think, internationally, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be in their repertory for like decades. You know, yeah. They had a magic flute that's like, I don't even know, 50 years old at least. Yeah, so it's gonna go on forever. Yeah.
And then one day your puppets will create the same magic moment you had when you walked in that room and saw them all around you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I still feel like that. When I saw the video, I feel like a kid again. I grew up with The Sound of Music. The Do Re Mi song is how my dad loved to sing when he was alive, when we were young. And, you know, we would like always sing Do Re Mi together. That's how he got us to like, you know, he wanted us to learn how to play the piano, everything. I was the only one who like said, no, I'm not playing the piano. But, you know, there's actually music is in my life. Anyhow, so
Right.
thank you for that. Yeah.
Well, I want to share one more moment from the Sound of Music before.
Your life, little girl, is an empty page that men will want to write on. You are 16, going on 17. Baby, it's time to think. Better beware, be canny and careful. Baby, you're on the brink. You are 16, going on 17. Fellows will fall in line. Eager young lads and roues and cats will offer you food and wine. Totally unprepared are you to face a world of men. Timid and shy and scared are you of things beyond your ken. You need someone older and wiser telling you what to do. I am 17, going on 18. I'll take care of you.
That is just amazing. I love how they just sort of float through the air, quite literally.
Like, in all those Chagall paintings, right? When you're
yes,
it's like the gravity doesn't matter. You're just like flying in the air, and yeah, it's great.
Now, speaking of Chagall, the next play has some religious elements. In fact, it's based on religion's tolerance or lack thereof. making it a rather timely piece. So this is Nathan the Wise. Now, if you could just kind of take us through some of the work here that you've done, in particular with the micrography.
Can you put a slide before that, so that we, can set up, because it's
Absolutely, absolutely. Here we go.
So it's set in the Third Crusade, right? During the Third Crusade, and this play is during Saladin, was head, and we have definitely Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all intermingled, coalescing, right? And really, I mean, this is actually, ironically, even though it's during the Crusade, but it's actually the most religious tolerant, little time in that, rough piece of history. So I was working with Brian Kulick, the director, and I was like, this play was never performed in. I don't think it was performed during Lessing's life until after, but correct me, I might be wrong.
I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, and then now we can go to the next slide, sorry. So my inspiration really is there were many inspirations, but one of the inspiration is micrography, which is very small writing. It actually is invented it's a Jewish tradition because in the Hebrew Bible, actually also in Islam as well, you're not supposed to, draw a figurative figure that you can worship. So it's very much, against idolatry. But the way they figure out is they can write a very small script and use it as a line to kind of make these figures of the story. And these are all from illuminated manuscripts, right? And every religion, these three major religions, has their own illuminated manuscripts. So you can see the micrography actually can then, you're reading, it's a script, but it also, helps to kind of create a sort of a picture or a pattern, which is really where I started that, because the calligraphy is really also what all three culture has in common. This is still Jewish micrography in a pattern, also there's something very obviously very mysterious, mystical about this tradition of how these words intersect, how do they form a pattern, how do you read, right?
Absolutely.
And then when you go into, of course, the illuminated manuscript of the Christians, again, it's calligraphy, and of course the first letter is always very much, designed. And then when you go into the Arabic, the Islamic calligraphy, this is Bismillah, and there's a way that they can arrange they have a way of arranging all the alphabets in a pattern or some kind of form or some kind of spiral. And that's very much part of their vocabulary. And so I wanted to be able to also capture that dynamic of energy as well. And then, and sometimes it would be a phrase, a prayer, and then every single illuminated manuscript, that when you open the manuscript, because they were all made by hand, painted, everything, right? You would come across the carpet page, which is a decorative page, but, it's sort of like the way you enter visually into the visual journey of this manuscript. And you can see, you have the Lindisfarne Gospel, Target, and Book of Kells, right? You can, of course, the cross is very important. And then you have, of course, the Quran, carpet page, and you have the Hebrew Bible, 1008. I mean, very, very old. and you can see that. So I want to also have that vocabulary going. And
Yeah.
another really, really great thing that a lot of Muslim culture, and you can see that in Turkey. You can see that in African countries, that we have this talismanic shirt that's supposed to be a form of protection if you're about to ready to go to war, or if you are, not well, and it would be the layer closest to your skin that you wear underneath your armor, and they are completely covered with writing, with patterns, with numbers. So they're all kind of like magical protection formula, and this in a way also look kind of like the pattern of a carpet page, and there are writings all over for protection, prayer maybe, or so I also want to capture that tradition. In Istanbul, I saw many of these in the Topkapi Palace Museum, and they're just also extraordinary, all hand done, pieces of works of art as well. And so I wanted to just take that spirit and incorporate them into the costume. So I spent a lot of time learning how to write all these scripts.
Amazing.
I took forever, and a lot of the, so I learned to write Hebrew, and I wanted them to be part of the design. So these words are really part of, every single costume, but it's also a manifestation of what's inside kind of coming out, or also you can say what's outside being impressed upon these people. The best way to do it, however, is that, for example, we couldn't just print like yards and yards of it, because they are very specific by the panel and how they're jointed. So we have to predetermine the pattern of each piece, and so that we know how they match. So I would already have these, after I finish all the drawing, I figure out how to piece it together with the pattern maker after the first fitting, and then we figure out how we want these sections to be printed, each piece of the pattern of the garment. And so we print all the wedges with a little seam allowance, so we can piece it together. And the other thing is, because a lot of these are taken from scriptures, holy verses, I don't want to put them on the actual clothing, so I would always try to deliberately make a mistake, so that it's not, sacrilege, an act of sacrilege in some way. So I would just always make a mistake.
Very wise.
Yeah, and so these are so the first one was for F. Murray Abraham. They all wear contemporary clothes underneath from the start of the play, and then they put these garments on to go into the past to continue to tell the story. And so some of these were printed, digitally printed on the textile, and some of them were hand silk screened and hand painted. So the challenge was how do you blend them so you can't tell, like, oh, that's machine and that's by hand. This was hand done, and the costumes were made by John Christensen, and printing, the silk screening and hand painting was by Hochi Asiatico, my lifelong companion. I mean, he's just like my art companion. He does all. He understands my aesthetic. Now, before we do the digital printing, we have a piece called the strike off. So you can. Actually, it's more than one. There are many samples, and you choose the best resolution, the best color, the best sharpness, and so then they would use that as a formula to print the rest.
Gotcha.
And you can see that is the machine. I almost screamed when I went to the factory, in New Jersey, and I just saw, like, oh my God, this is like coming alive in front of my eyes. Like, oh my God.
Now, these are scans of your personal calligraphy.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
An amazing amount of work went into each one of these, using so many different using the technology and the hand-drawn piece. It's amazing.
Yeah, I was very, and this is a fitting for Saladin's costume. And we also try to figure out, oh, how do we get that corner not touch the ground? But it has to, so we just kind of dealt with it. But it was we cheated a little, as you can see. And then these two were hand printed, silk screen by Ho Chi and hand painted. And I think the theater gave them to Ho Chi as a present because they couldn't keep them in their storage, and they're too specific. It's like, oh, when are you ever going to do another show like this? So the form is too small for the kaftan for Saladin, but you get the gist of the front.
Yeah, and here are some production photos.
Yeah, and I'm just speechless. It's so, it's great.
They're lovely, lovely. So, if you can believe it, we're almost at the end of the hour. So I'm going to, for the sake of time and a few other things I want to talk to you about, we're going to skip the Golden Child.
That's fine.
But I'm curious about teaching, what teaching means to you. You've been teaching at the Conservatory of Theater Arts at Purchase for a while now. I was lucky to be a student in your Sources of Stage Design class, where we mainly went through fashion and textiles through the ages. Of course, you teach costume there. What has teaching taught you?
Teaching is a very reflective process, right? Introspective process, right? You have to understand, your own process. And a lot of times, when you're actively being a freelance costume designer, you go from one to the next, to one project to the next, and you hardly have any time. It's like you're on the freeway, with the, if you're driving a car with the top down, and, your hair is like all a mess by the time you're done. So when you have to come back to teach, then you have to kind of okay, when did I start? How did I look at something? And you have to be very self-aware, right? And you have to know how you do things. It's not that I'm trying to pass on my method to other students. I'm trying to, bring out what their, who they are. Everybody has their own journey of self-discovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to, sorry, there's an airplane because I'm near an airport, but I'm trying to bring that out. And so that, everyone's work has, it's about each person's authenticity, right? Really, my job, of course, is to see everyone, every one of my students' full potential, because I had very good teacher in my life, and they saw me and my full potential even more than my parents did. They saw something in me, and they understood that, and I think that's very important to be able to do that, because then the rest of it, it's up to the student to decide where they want to go. But if you can see that within that person, it really opens them up. And so that's why I really love teaching, because it's really about hope and faith and self-determination and discovery. So it's always about surprise. And the other reason why I really wanted to teach is, as I told you earlier in the conversation, there were very few shows I've seen that I felt like how I read it from exactly. And I wasn't looking for that exact feeling, but I would say sometimes, in my head, I had an idea for a show, but I know that it was sort of not possible to do it. It's like, hopefully it can happen in the future. We're not ready for that kind of thinking yet. There's something very, theater is a very tricky art form. Sometimes it's a little aggressive. things are changing, but like we find certain things like what qualifies as sexy or funny, or like I always wonder like how come all these plays about people who are fighting, like a couple who are fighting, why do they always fight in the kitchen? Like I don't understand, you know what I mean? Like I fight on the street with my husband or ex-husband, well, you know what I mean? And so I'm just like, there are so many. I feel like there's also, sorry, there's another plane. So many
All good.
potential that we could explore, but maybe I wouldn't be able to explore in my own lifetime. And I have also, certainly seen the transition of, how operas were done through my mentor, right? Peter Sellers, before Peter Sellers, I remember when he did those Mozart operas at PepsiCo here, back in the 80s, contemporizing all the Mozart opera, everybody was like, oh my God, this is sacrilege. And now everybody's doing it. So you always see that, like, huge change. So for me, teaching is about passing the baton, but also opening the door for more new forms of theater to happen in the future. Some things that I will not be able to ever foresee in my own lifetime, with my own understanding, of theater because of my limitation of my context, per se. So I think that's why I want to teach.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's a noble profession, especially in today's climate. I will also say I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you one of the things that you taught me that I've carried with me forever and will, is that a designer's job is never done. That listening to the world around you and taking in your surroundings, simply sitting on the subway and looking around, kind of taking in what story each person is telling by the way they present themselves to the world, whether it's what they're wearing or their posture. That all goes into a designer's sort of encyclopedia of information and inspiration. And you express the importance of that. And what a gift. What a gift to instill that in all of your students' lives, that importance of paying attention and looking around and listening.
Mm-hmm.
Truly inspirational. Thank you for that.
Thank you. It's like what we do has to do with lives of human beings around us. So, we have to respect. Everybody has a story, sometimes very buried, very deep down, but everybody has one. And it's always very interesting to, you have to be an archaeologist on the subway.
Right. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Now, upcoming for you, there's an opera that you're working on in Australia. Could you tell us about that real quick?
Well, I'm working on a new production of a ring cycle. Very excited about it. Of course, because of COVID, we have to postpone by a year, but it is still being, we have fittings getting done, fabrics being printed, and, stuff made out of costume pieces made out of unconventional materials being experimented upon. So I'm very excited about it because it is also like a new ring cycle that the surround on the set. We have set pieces as well, but the surround is 25. Huge digital panel. So I'm working very closely with the director Chen Shizhang and Lee Sackwitz, who is the projection designer from Berlin. And so she's also designing a lot of the digital contents. Obviously, we're not doing like 16 hours of digital content because everybody would just come out like dazed and confused, but
like they are now.
Yeah, but they're very focused, very beautiful, very poetic, and very evocative imagery. And we really work very closely together. And because of all of that light, I have to find different textile that would actually work in this kind of context. So we actually, one of the first things we did, after we kind of sorted out some kind of direction where we were going with the design, was I brought I think over 60 huge samples from different stores, and they also gather different samples in Australia. But Australia, they don't really have a huge garment district, so we really buy a lot from here or other parts of Europe. And I brought them over there, and we did light tests. That's what we did for a few days, just to kind of see what happens. So it's very much about, there are just so many different realms in the ring cycle. You have the gods, you have the Nibelungans, you have the Rhine maidens, you have the Valkyries, you have humans, you have, you have the Gibbachungs. You just have so many different civilization, and some of it is about evolution, and some of it is about devolution, right? Devolving, right? So it's like, what are we doing? What is happening to us as a, humankind, and to our world? And a lot of experiment that I'm doing with the textile, and some of it is not even textile. Some of it is like, that we have costumes made out of hair. We have special dreadlocks that we're using to make clothing. So we're getting those dreadlocks made in Poland. We're just sourcing all over the world with craftsmen who are working on the show everywhere. So it's very, very exciting. And in a way, because we have this extra time, because of COVID and the postponement, we have a little more time to do more research and development on some kind of process of figuring how to manufacture some of the clothing. So, we're trying to take advantage of that as well. But yeah, really incredible shop in Australia, Upper Australia.
Wow, it sounds remarkable. So to close us out today, I have a final question for you.
Uh-oh.
And that is, what is your hope for the future of the art?
My hope for the future of the art, it's really about making sure that we don't end up just telling one story for, one people, I just want it to be as many stories about, and perspective, about different people from different cultures, people from different historical periods, and that we have a deeper empathy and acceptance of things that are other. I think, with all of this polarization that we have going on, a lot of anti-immigrant, so many, and cancel culture. Everything is anti-cancel culture. And, and we have so much to really learn from each other. And, I don't want to wake up and just only look in the mirror and just identify myself as one identity. I have 8, 10, 12 readily available identities. I don't want to forget about them. I want to make sure we still, I'm not just a Chinese, an immigrant, a woman, an artist, a teacher, a theater designer. I'm a nature lover, dog lover. I like cats sometimes too. Foodie. I have so many. I love to read. I just want to make sure we don't forget all of these things, because it's very much needed right now. And sometimes it's good to, I know we have to do a lot of, digital forms of communication, but sometimes, it's good to just throw your iPhone out the window.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the generosity of your time today. You are a poetic soul, and this was such an enriching conversation. So I thank you for your time.
I thank you for taking the time to interview me and ask such great questions that I didn't even think about until I hop on this. It's a lot for me to reflect on. So thank you. You're teaching me today.
Oh,
Thank you.
thanks. Well, if you just stick around in the green room, we'll talk in just a moment. But for all of you who joined us today, thank you so much. We will be back with another guest before you know it. Until that time, stay safe, stay home, and wear a mask. I'll see you soon. Have a great day.